Today, we're going to find out if you can make great pour-over coffee using the Hario V-60 pour-over dripper with no fancy equipment, no fancy kettle, no kitchen scale. Today we're going to break all the rules and have the coffee professionals squirming in their seats because the only equipment we're going to use aside from the brewer is a pot of water on the stove, a simple kitchen timer, any kind will do, and a cup to brew the coffee into. So come along and make great Hario V-60 pour-over coffee with us. Let's get started. To get started, you're going to need a 2-cup measuring cup, and you're going to want to pour about 2 1/4 cups of water in the measuring cup and pour that into a pot on the stove. Turn it on, bring it to a boil. While that's boiling, you're going to take your coffee filter and you're going to fold it right along the edge and then fold it in half. This just helps it fit into the brewer a little bit better when you're starting to pour water in there. So just in there, no problem. Now I have a nice big mug. This mug holds about 16 ounces of water. Grab that water off the stove, turn it off, and pour yourself about 3/4 of a cup of water. 3/4 of a cup, and pour that water onto the filter to rinse the filter. This helps the coffee taste cleaner and better once it's brewed. It gets rid of most of the paper flavor, and it's really important when you're brewing good coffee to get that filter nice and rinsed, and it also heats up your mug at the same time. Then you can just discard the water either in the sink or anywhere you can. I'm just going to put it right here in this cup. Don't need that anymore. Now my cup's nice and hot. Now you'll notice that the filter wasn't super even, so I'm going to pick it up and kind of even it out a little bit, push it back down into my brewer, make sure it looks nice and even all around the edges. You can see how it's touching the edges on all sides. It's going to help the water flow evenly through the coffee. So you're going to use 4 tablespoons to brew 12 ounces of coffee. So that's going to be 1. You don't have to make them small, just regular, you can have them over a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 tablespoons, which is around 22 grams on a scale, but we're not using a scale today. And we're not using an electric kettle. These things do make it a lot easier to do the pour over method. We're going to be using the pot. So we have our coffee in here and we're going to settle it. And we want to make that kind of flat as we can because it's going to allow the water to brew better, to brew the coffee more evenly if it's evenly distributed. So I'm going to just tap that a little bit. Got my timer ready. Now this water just came to a boil. It can sit for a second and that's okay. As long as it doesn't sit for more than a minute, we're good. All right, so I'm gonna have my timer in my hand. I'm gonna have the pot with the hot water and I'm gonna hold my finger on that timer because I wanna be ready to hit it when the water hits the coffee. So there we go, and I'm timing. And I'm gonna pour a little bit of water in here. It's not going to be a lot, see, just a little bit. And then I'm going to wait a minute. I'm going to set that pot back down. I'm going to wait 30 seconds. What that's doing is, if you look closely and you can see those bubbles coming up out of that coffee, those are, this gas is releasing from the coffee. And we're going to wait 30 seconds, almost there. Now is the 30-second mark, and that's called blooming. So then we're going to start pouring our water very slowly because you want it to take around 2 to maybe 2 minutes, 15 seconds or so to pour that water. But it's around and around about. And pour real slowly. And you want to go in little circles around the cup constantly. You want to kind of try to keep the water at the same level throughout the brewing process. Around about a minute or so. It's about a minute now. It's kind of hard to keep it even with the pot. I'm going to set that pot down and I'm going to give this a quick little swirl. And that's going to help even out the coffee bed as I continue to pour. It's about a minute and a half now. And I'm going to pour a little bit at a time. Whoops. And continue to pour in that little circle. It's 2 minutes now. But I don't want to just pour the rest of it really fast. I'm just going to continue to pour it. Maybe. There we go. Sometimes after a little while you start getting it a little more even. Do that little circle motion the whole time. There we go. So this is called the drawdown. The water is going to sit there and just draw down. It should finish around between 3 minutes and 4 minutes. Anytime within that is fine. It just really depends on the coffee, whether it's a light roast or a dark roast, what grind size you used. Now, what we're using today is actually coffee that's been ground for drip, which is coarser than what we normally would use, but it still actually works pretty well. So when you're using a scale, you're gonna weigh, you can weigh your coffee and your water. It's much easier to use the scale, but not everyone has a kitchen scale at home. And not everyone has a really nice hot water kettle. This really helps pour the water evenly over the coffee grounds. But if you don't have one, that's why we're doing this today. That's fine. Okay, so it's 3 minutes, 44 seconds, and it looks like the coffee water has sufficiently gone down, which is really good timing. And you can see how evenly the coffee bed is. It's a little dip right here and a little up here. It's not perfect, but for using a pot, it's pretty good. I'm just gonna set that there. And there's your beautiful, lovely cup of coffee that came from the Hario V-60 pour over. Let me just give that a taste. The verdict. That's great. That's wonderful. So you could still do a pour over without all the fancy equipment. No scale, no kettle. Basic equipment, scoops, kitchen timer, a pot and a cup. Thanks for joining me, learning how to use the Hario V-60 pour over dripper. To get great coffee and more brewing tips, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit beanhoppers.com.